Well, I'm here. It's a pleasure to talk to my new friend, our new friend, Genesis Tramaine, on her new show, Sweet Jesus.
Sweet Jesus.
Sweet Jesus. I was not going to say anything else, but I think that's just a terrific title.
Thank you.
So we once talk about the importance of your grandmother and mine. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something we have in common already.
Really?
Without knowing it. Yeah, my grandmother, who said something very profound when I was barely 10 years old, she said, when you grow up, grandson, you will suffer just like anyone else on this earth. Mm-hmm. And you never think once that your suffering is more unique than theirs. Mm-hmm. But make sure you suffer the right way. Mm. And that stayed with me forever. Mm-hmm. And I know that your Nana was very important to you. Mm-hmm. She have taught you how to mediate through life, give you strength. Absolutely. So let's share with us a little bit about her.
Sure. And thank you for sharing that with me, because now I have that from your grandmother as well. And that's the magic of grandmothers and the mother tongue that I have and continue to be taught to and through. My grandmother stands at 5'10", and her hands are large, and she's very bold in spirit. Mm-hmm. She cusses, and she claims the name of Jesus. She is the smartest person I know, and she is the kindest person I know. Yeah. She's always been grounded in her giving. Yeah. One of the things that my grandmother was never afraid to give was her opinion. She made clear when I was very young that I should stay focused on what worked for me, that I should stay connected to people who loved me, and that I should love in this world. One of the things that I often lean on are some of those old sayings between my grandmother and I as well. Yeah. One of the things that she says when I go to her house, even still, is, Jen, give me some sugar. Mm-hmm. And that means that I should give her a kiss on the cheek. Yeah. And it's it's like the sweetest embrace. Yeah. And it's one of those things that reminds me instantly that I'm home. Mm-hmm. It reminds me instantly that I'm safe, and that I can stand up completely in myself. Mm-hmm. That is a gift that she continues to give me, and she's always given me, even when I was a child. Yeah. My grandmother's kitchen, I would say, was my first studio. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that, but her wooden table and her rice pot that was always going, and her phone she was always talking on, all of those things were very important tools in the alchemy of my foundation, if you would. One of the things that she gave me was an opportunity to lean into different media. I didn't grow up with acrylic paint readily available to me. We grew up across the street from 99-cent stores and bodegas and I would say Puerto Rican restaurants and a different type of joy center in Brooklyn, if you would. But there was certainly no acrylic, paints or nothing like that. But oddly, I also faced Pratt.
Yes.
So, it was this really interesting intersection that I grew up in between. Yeah. And my grandmother taught me how to use everything we had, plus what I knew I should, to create the best I could. Yeah. And those developed into portraits.
Amazing. I mean, I love the term you just say so, alchemy of my foundation. Mm-hmm. So living not far from Pratt, which is a known art school, but for some reason, whatever determined from your early thinking, you went to college and earned a graduate degree in order to be a teacher of mathematics. So how did that came about?
Well, Phong, I grew up in Brooklyn, which means at some point coming out of undergrad, I ran out of money. you know, and I had this dream of being a painter and being this prolific community, you know, organizer. And I had to find a way to be all that I could be and save the space that I came from, if you would.
Yeah.
I just always wanted to be somebody that my community could be proud of, that my grandmother would be proud of, that my mom would brag about.
Yeah.
And where I'm from, that meant holding a certain status, you know, somewhere. Yeah. My grandmother was a teacher for over 30 years, and she always told me not to go into education, to be educated, and to do my best to educate others, but not to go into the sort of the formal spaces of a classroom.
Yeah.
Coming home one night in the subway, I saw a sign for teacher fellows, and I went for it.
Yeah.
And I got in, and gratefully so. I went with mathematics because it was the need in the community at the time. At this point in my career, I've taught K through collegiate. Teaching is, you know, an absolute joy. Children are a different type of blessing and service work that I'm very grateful to have been called to. They taught me a lot about how to run in the wilderness, how to be forgiving in the wilderness.
Yeah.
And they also taught me how to work your butt off, even when there's like very small reward.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I learned a lot. I taught for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I taught math. Yeah. I taught math and art back and forth.
Yeah.
Really, really great time. Kids are honest. Kids tell you when something is good. Kids tell you when something is, you know, terrible. I would bring my paintings into the students as a reward on Fridays. And it became a thing. And they would tell me, you know, oh my goodness, that's terrible. Or wow, that's amazing. You know, so it was their opinions were primary and also supreme for me in those years, in those wilderness years where I was working my butt off to become and to be better and to learn more about this painting medium, this color thing, these lines, and how does this work? Where do I fit into this? But the students kept me grounded and kept me focused.
So 10 years teaching math. And then at which point the desire, this urge that is so strong that you must become an artist? Was there a specific epiphany?
Yes, I hit, you know, I knew that I wanted to be more in this world. I knew I had more to give. My painting dream wasn't far. It just wasn't something that I was able to share with everyone.
Yeah.
I just didn't feel like I was living in the fulfillment of who I was.
Yeah.
And I hit a pretty low pit. Folks call it depression. I had never heard that term where I'm from, but it felt pretty low.
Yeah.
The only reference to sort of foundational strength, back to that word, that I knew I could lean on without question was the spaces that I was taught to lean on. And I was taught those spaces at home. Regardless of how bad things were, regardless of how amazing things were, my grandmother would always claim Jesus.
Yeah.
I would pray, and I tried to go to churches to affirm my beliefs, and I wasn't always welcomed in those spaces.
Yeah.
Often turned away. When I moved to New Jersey, I found a church home.
Yeah.
And I arrived in myself differently, spiritually. I grew spiritually because I grew in curiosity.
Yeah.
It furthered my seeking. It became my obsession to learn more about Jesus, God. What is this thing? What is this? How does this work for me? Where do I fit in this? Who am I in this vortex of a world? Why am I important? Am I important? What am I supposed to do with this gift that I have? Yeah. That seems completely under a carpet. No one's, you know. Yeah. It's not that important, you know. Yeah. Yeah. And my want to worship became of greater importance than my need to be seen. Yeah. But God has a way of existing in thy will. You know, when we pray that thy will be done, you know, sometimes it means that you're being set up for a life that even you don't see. And in that case, that was the case for me. Yeah. I didn't know that all of this would happen. You know, again, I just wanted to be something that my family would be proud of.
Yeah, yeah.
I prayed to be someone who would be respected as a worshiper, seen as someone who as a safe point for someone else.
Yeah.
But I never imagined that the paintings would expand in this way. I never imagined that. I was just looking for myself.
Yeah.
And the self-reflection is stunning.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's a very deep portal. And when it's guarded with prayer, it's very safe. I can exist there. And so then I was back in this color field.
Yeah.
You know, I was back in this very childlike space.
Yeah.
And when I'm in a childlike space, I'm bold, I'm big.
Yeah, I would love to elaborate more about that. But what's so important for me is that the function religion, the word religion actually come from a Latin word, religio, which means to bind, to unite. And it was during the Trump presidency that I had this urge, this strong need to go back and study American history. Because after all, my family came here for freedom.
Sure.
We were blacklisted by the Communist Party that put us in labor camp. So we fled in order to escape the tyranny of communism. But I never really read American history that well, that carefully until 4 years ago. So the most important book at the time, it still is Alexis de Tocqueville. It's called probably the best book ever written about America and the best book ever written about democracy. It's called Democracy in America. The first volume was published in 1835. The second was 1840. And I just bring up the important distinction that he was able to observe from classical liberalism in Europe, which more or less the continuous friction between religion and government.
In politics.
In politics. And what is so interesting, and he pointed out in America, he recognized that the friend of religion, party religion, can be a friend of party of liberty. Because democracy have terrible tendency to be seduced by materials gain. Therefore, it degrades the soul. So religion have an important function in democracy.
Absolutely.
You know, and I wasn't aware of it, but basically the fact that the Puritans, when they came here, they call themselves the Pilgrim. They have a strong religious mission. So I understand it better. So the Baptist church, it's a very important function.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you can go back and think about the first awakening, the second awakening. So I would love to hear more about that role, like how the portrait, I know that you make reference to saint, specific saint and religious character.
Yeah. I read the Bible. I refer to it as the word. I read the word and I don't see myself in it.
Yeah.
I don't see any. I look through all of a lot of the same literature that I'm told to read through, some of the best in the world that can sort of capture all of this historical value that the Bible is supposed to provide us with. And I'm flipping through the pages and every face on the page is white. It just is unreal, literally. It's surreal, literally. It's so stoic and boring, and it just feels like a bunch of lies and tales, and it felt it made me upset. You know, and as an artist, when you're pushed into a space where when you have something to say, you should say it. I have a responsibility to the world to say what's on my heart to say. But before doing so, I've been taught to take this to prayer.
Yeah.
And so there's a religion, right? It's this practice that says before you enter your day or your craft or your service, you ask God for guidance and you thank God for the day.
Yeah.
So the religion is often what keeps me, again, curious, but it's also what gives me the motive to interrupt, to disturb.
Yeah.
God asks that we seek, that we knock, that we make noise around his name.
Yeah.
I feel a responsibility to paint things as they come to me. My research has shown me that the saints were not all white men. It's impossible.
Yeah.
Some of the saints looked like me.
Yeah.
Some of the saints were women.
Yeah.
Some of the saints were queer.
Yeah.
Some of the saints were Asian.
Yeah.
Some of the saints had long hair. Some of them were bald. It's
Yeah.
impossible for us to live in this world as different as we are and it not reflect the world that our Christ lived in. I don't believe that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, a part of my responsibility to the children who continue to encourage me in this world is to be honest with them.
Yeah.
And I serve a God that breathed life in color.
Yeah.
And I also serve a God that respects honesty.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's go back to, again, that baby Genesis playing or making drawing on your grandmother's wooden table. You remember what you were making at that young age?
Yeah. I would draw hearts and I would draw stick figures like everyone else. But my stick figures were often, I don't know, my cousins always said that my pictures were ugly, that they looked like monsters. Sometimes I would write words across them. Sometimes I would draw colors on the faces that didn't belong. My people were not always brown.
Yeah.
Sometimes they were my favorite color. What if I have a world of all purple people? I mean, that feels better to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
My grandmother would allow me to lean on my imagination, and she would encourage me to stay there. She would say, "You're a child, honey. Enjoy your time. Be a child. While you're a child, be a child."
Yeah.
So yes, I remember coloring neatly on purpose and coloring outside of the lines on purpose. When the pictures were for my mom, I colored in the lines.
Yeah.
And when they were for my grandmother, I could do whatever I wanted.
Yeah.
But the most important part of the entire practice is doing it good enough to be hung on the wall.
Yeah.
Because once you can get a Black woman to look twice at something,
Yeah.
well, I've created art.
Yeah.
And I learned that very, very young.
Yeah.
So those were the only elevation. That was the only elevation I needed to believe that I was good in the paint. The religion is what encourages me to make mistakes.
Yeah. Interesting.
It's what encourages, because religion encourages faith. So I can make as many mistakes as necessary. You know, when the man asked the Christ, he said, "How many times do I forgive a man?" And he said, 77. He said, 77. I think about that. I can make 77 mistakes in an hour, you know?
Well, my favorite philosopher, Immanuel Kant, once say something that stuck with me forever, became almost like a philosophy, what I do with the rail. It say, from the crooked timber of humanity, nothing ever made straight. So I do encourage and I acknowledge imperfection.
Yeah.
I think it's so important. But going back to the rapport, the deep avocation and communication with the children. You know, Picasso, I think it might have been after the Second War, he was walking with the British art historian, Sir Herbert Reed, and they gone to see a show of children's drawing. And I'm paraphrasing, but Picasso said, I can draw when I was their age like Raphael, but it took me all these years in order to draw like them now. Which is so interesting because when children make art, they don't censor their enthusiasm, their excitement. They let it go through their own growth receptivity or whatever that was. So to me, the way you spoke about religion, your religious commitment and following that kind of almost like impersonalness to the objective that you're trying to achieve, and the freedom of the children, and enthusiast children.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very interesting combination.
It is an interesting combination, but when that doesn't always capture what my early trainings look like. Because the materials were so limited, I had to cut the enthusiasm sometimes.
Yeah.
Art was something that I enjoyed, but it was taken very seriously. If I created something that I was proud of that wasn't visually appealing, my mother would tell me so.
Yeah.
I don't come from a home where the women who raised me would fluff me.
Yeah.
They'd let you know. I would also hear things like, don't waste paper.
Yeah.
I was taught young to value my things, to value paper. If I had
materials,
canvas, oh my goodness, what a gift. So no, actually very opposite in many ways.
Yeah.
I was allowed to play outside, but I was taught that if you're good at something, take it seriously.
They are frontal.
Uh-huh.
They are looking at you straightforwardly. They're not in three-quarter, neither in profile.
Uh-huh.
So they are very frontal, confronting the viewer.
Uh-huh. Just like the narratives.
Right. And the multitude of eyes, teeth showing in full capacity, nose is here somewhere, ear can be in various scale, which essentially lead me to think about your sense of scale or proportion. I would rather think of scale because you have to somehow get the right canvas in order to have the portrait that would fit in that particular space.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yes. The square is particularly important to my work. I really love squares and I love rectangles. Like so much.
Yeah.
They're very even. I love the way they fold. I love the corners of them. Jack Whitten teaches us to escape our squares. And I thought, how powerful is that? How powerful is it to have a space, a universe, if you would, where that I could tap into and out of when I choose to. So that scale that you're mentioning is something that I can build upon and on the square, but it's really something I can dive into with the portrait.
Yeah.
When you evoke spirit, I'm not sure necessarily how long I'm going to be there.
Yeah.
I don't know how many layers are between my start and end. I'm just grateful for the experience. But scale is something that it's ever important to be willing to communicate. It's very hard to allow this much transparency through the work. I think it's important to be honest with what I see. The word teaches us about certain angels that appear in the heavens, and they have several eyes. It's very interesting. And I thought to myself, well, this is impossible. You know, why would that come to me? But why wouldn't it? The other thing I think is that things that the eyes, sometimes they're circles, sometimes they're not. The rhythm feels very good. It feels good to me. The repetition is also something that I enjoy. It's also rhythmic. It keeps me on point, literally. It keeps me in balance, if you would.
Which bring back to the idea of gospel. You know, it's a musicality, a sense of musical.
Right. It's like the chorus portion of the portrait.
Right.
Also, when I'm working, I like that the work travels with me. I love that the eyes travel with me. Sometimes they're eyes from the actual content or the saint, and sometimes they're the eyes of the viewer. Sometimes they just look like eyes, and I'm not quite sure what they are. I'm really grateful that the presentation of prayer is in the form of portraiture. But I love that I'd be able to take apart the work or pull the scale apart and put it back together. Like an accordion of sound, if you would.
Well, I see the multitude of eyes, multitude teeth. You mentioned my late friend Jack Whitten.
God bless.
He also had this longing to make works of art or painting that can come close to a form of cosmic totality or the dimension that exists in the cosmic realm. It doesn't have to be always earthbound, you know? incredible artist who know also how to deploy the alchemy of his material. Jack was terrific about that.
I agree.
But these eyes and teeth and more or less always somewhat get painted in the middle, and sometimes they kind of lean away from the central axis of the face.
Yeah.
You know?
They're looking at so many things. They're
They're looking at so many things.
They're
Exactly.
so responsible.
They are the constellation.
Yeah, they have to allow enough light in.
Right.
And they have to allow enough sound out. I love that I often have reoccurring dreams a lot. And a dream that I see often is an audience of people looking at me.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that's often reflected in the work as well. I often have dreams of birds ascending, which is one of my favorite ones to have. It's so pretty. And randomly, 3 years ago, I started painting
St. Francis.
these birds.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just ever grateful for, just for how it places, for where it lands. But it is this beautiful gospel sound. It is a resounding sound.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes you got to add a little jazz. You got to add a little spice for it to make sense, for it to capture the audience, for it to capture the bite of the narrative that I'm trying to sing through. That's and then another thing I think is that there's a lot of liberty as a painter. I get to paint it as I feel it should be painted. So after the message is delivered through me, I get to step back and I get to add all of my Black woman to it. God gives me that much strength in this lifetime. It's a beautiful. It's one. I'm grateful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because without that, I don't think it would be received in the same way. Yeah, the name of it is By the Skin of My Teeth.
The skin of my teeth.
Yes, because there's so many times in our life where we just make it by the skin of our teeth. We just sort of make it. And I'm so grateful for those moments.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for the reoccurrence of those moments as well, because I get to learn something different every time.
Yeah.
But when you're in the middle of them, they feel terrible. It's very annoying. It's so much. It's a fun space of expression to play with, surprise, or the idea of juxtaposing the smile. Yeah, I really appreciate. I like to pick apart the smile. I like to play with the bone structure of the jawline and teeth because that's where prayer comes from. I like the sound that the paintings make through those spaces. I love to blend the background and foreground because I think that's what real smiling does. And if you spend too much time on the expression of joy in a portrait, you'll fuck it up. So it's important that you give it, the joy that you have to give it. It's a passionate give so that it can sing back to you. So the teeth that you see, it's a conversation. Sometimes it's a conversation between the saints. Sometimes they're talking to me. Sometimes we're all singing along. Either way, we're all in conversation. Everyone can hear each other and everyone knows to be quiet at the same time too. Yeah. I don't always know those reasons and I'm not always sure when they're going to jump in or not. Yeah. I'm just grateful to be present when they are. Yeah. Yeah. And my only job is to be present.
It's interesting, isn't it? They barely have any kind of representation of the nose. The nose often are not there in order to make room for the eyes and the teeth. Yeah. And it's interesting, but the sense of sound, the sense of seeing is very visible, very amplified. Mm-hmm. And let me ask you this. So I'm now thinking of them as almost like an orchestrated, like an orchestra. Mm-hmm. Orchestra of seeing and singing or talking. Yeah. And there's a sense of how do you hold the space, the equilibrium of what is static or at least stationary and what is in flux, in movement. Yep. Is that a fair question to ask?
Yes, it is. Hence the quiet in the background. I have to put solid colors in the background because if not, it's hard to quiet it. You have to balance the work. Yeah. So that's often why it also helps me to stay in relation, and it also gives me a way out of the portrait and a way back into the portrait. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's a very fair question to ask. Yeah, I hope I answered that.
You did. I mean, for this painting right behind it, the two paintings behind us, they are double portrait, and we can see the different way of portraying the eyes. Sometimes they are quasi circle, sometimes they somewhat oval as forms, but then below there's this imperfect circle
Yeah.
that's spinning right below the neck.
Yeah.
And that just implies the sense of movement for sure. So the two head doesn't appear too static. So that decision is probably made last.
Yeah.
I don't know.
This is new ground for sure. I was just saying that I don't even know the language anymore. It's very new ground.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful to be here, but where am I? I don't know. I've been referring to these as my Hot Wheels. I think that movement in the work is important, especially with portraiture work. And I think I get to create it however it comes to me. But yes, you're right. That happened toward the end. My aim was just to paint the portraits, but I also, again, I get to have fun with the elevation and presentation of the works.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to continue to be daring with how I paint. I don't want this shit to become boring, and I don't want to become contrived, and people to kind of already guess what I'm going to do next. That's so boring. A part of religion or spiritual work is that I get to be young and youthful and fresh.
Yeah.
And sometimes often it means taking a big chance.
Yeah.
And this is a big chance for me, but man, I love it. I also, I've been collecting Hot Wheels over the summer with my wife. I've been fascinated with the idea of these little wheels, this rubber, this round circle, again, pulling in the most, a very complex shape, but in its most simple format, something imperfect, something that I know I'm not going to get right. Why try it? Why not? Why not lean on the bend of rubber or the turn or spin of a circle, if you would, and why not do it again and again? Back to the repetition notions, and religion was always something that we traveled to, Phong.
Yeah.
It's not something you just kind of show up and you wake up to. It's something we always got in a car. We always kind of packed in and went to church or went to the spiritual center.
Yeah.
So I'm really grateful for that spin as well.
Yeah.
No pun intended, but really grateful for it. I'm very, very excited for Paris. I'm very excited for Sweet Jesus. And these bodies of works are unique in that they are brand spanking new. And I am in Job right now. I'm between Job and I'm still in the book of Genesis. I think I will be forever. But it's this central, it's this space of joy. I'm really teaching myself and learning about joy. There's a sweetness in joy, but there's also a sadness in joy too. The balance it's beautiful. It's a beautiful balance beam, if you would. I think I've been doing my best to paint from that place. Last year, I was blessed to go I took myself on a sugar tour. I wanted to learn more about the contents of the Last Supper's meal. One of the things that they ate, were dates. And so I wanted to learn more about what kept things sweet during the time, in the time of the Christ. So I went on a sugar tour. I went on a sweet tour. And a lot of these paintings were developed through that process. I included I upgraded, or if you would, I changed. I included different things in my putty, which is really fun. And yeah.
Well, they certainly not anxious about having cavities.
No, some of them look like they've had too much candy, right? Too much sugar, too sweet. Sometimes I think often when I was a little girl and I smiled, I was often told, like, I have such a wide grin, be mindful of your smile. But I think that we should always smile as widely as we can. I think that joy is one of those things that it's a blessing of expression, even at its low point. There's a sweetness there. There's something that's really, really like special to me about knowing that even in spaces where I don't know sort of what to place next or where to go next or how to sort of get to the end of the portrait, the Christ is with me. I'm not alone in that place. I get to lean into the sweetness of Jesus. Often, I think religion it pushes us into these like odd tunnels and walls and rules that don't allow for sweetness, that don't allow for softness. I really want this show to present the softness of the Christ, even though I'm presenting it in these very square or rectangular structures. I never ever want folks to feel limited by their spirituality, and I hope that these are clear examples of how to escape that, or how to. I don't know how to. Yeah, my point is to escape it, but there is a sweetness in all of this. Is sometimes that I don't know. Sometimes sugar is it's not sugar. I went on a sugar tour and I found sugar. I found sugar cane, treacle. None of that stuff is good for you. So it can't be that. It's not sugar. That's not the sweet I'm talking about. It's a date. It's like it's something that sustains you. Yeah. It's something that can get you through your day. It's something that is small. It's something that you can pack it light, you know, but it carries so heavily, you know. Yeah. You can share it. It's enough to hold in your hand. It won't get you sticky. It's sweet. It's one of the abundance. That's a sweet gesture from God. Yeah. Having enough to give is a sweet gesture from God. Color is a sweet gesture from God. So I wanted to make sure that I elevated all of those spaces. Shape is a gesture from God. It's a gift. Mm-hmm. We would know to the eloquence of imperfection around a circle if we weren't given the perfection of the sun. So mm-hmm. I wanna always make sure that we use these positions of expression on canvas as a means of like celebration. Yeah. For our Lord and Savior. One of the things that my Nana always said is, sweet Jesus, sweet Jesus. One of the songs my mom sang coming up, at the end of it says, sweet Jesus. What does that mean? Jesus, sweet, sweet Jesus. So I again, in leaning on the things that I was taught at my grandmother's kitchen table, right? There's always salt and pepper and sugar at the table. Yeah. So, right. So I figured out the salt, Matthew 5:13. I figured that out. Mm-hmm. And then the pepper has a lot. The Black woman in me teaches me. I know how to use my spice, honey. I can cook that pepper. I can work, right? So I know how to till the ground and get that. And then there's the sugar thing that I had to go back into and learn more about. And so here we are in the sweetness of the Christ, if you would, and the experiences that has brought me. And I think the portraiture is a safe space for me to smile through, and it's a safe space for me to see through and to be seen through. We mentioned the eyes and the teeth and all of that. It all makes sense in the church for me. It all makes sense in the heavens that I pray to hope to one day be ascended to for me. And one day in this world, on our ground, in this position, it'll make perfect sense here too. I'm really grateful for the experiences that I've had with children because they taught me that they're always watching. So we adults may not quite understand what's going on in the Genesis Tramaine portraits, but the children seem to be plugged in, and they know. They know.
They do. Children, whom we are, once were. Mm-hmm. They, as we grown up, once were. Mm-hmm. And we must return to that innocence. Mm-hmm. We must recapture that sense of innocence. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite songs by blind Willie Johnson is "God Don't Ever Change." You know that song? Amazing.
Yeah, it's one of the songs that I listen to. It's God's unchanging hand.
Yeah, right. So God in the middle of the ocean. God in the middle of the day.
No.
Yeah, don't ever change.
Won't change.
Well, congratulations, Genesis.
Thank you,
on
brother.
the beautiful show.
Thank you so much.
Sweet Jesus.
Sweet Jesus.
Sweet Jesus.